right, ladies and gentlemen, Barstool Backstage on the guest list today. One we've been waiting for. Singer, songwriter, Grammy Award winner, the leader of Matchbox 20, Mr. Rob Thomas in the building. Rob, how are we, buddy?
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Good,
hey.
man. I almost stood up for that. I'm fucking hype.
Me too. What? Oh, sorry. No, wait.
Oh, man. No, Rob, we can't thank you enough for being here.
It's my pleasure, man.
A new Matchbox 20 record on the way.
Right?
How much longer do we have to wait?
It comes out May 26th is the full album.
Unbelievable.
And I think we'll just release, we just put out a single, but then we'll just kind of release songs along the way probably as well.
Dude, the new single, Dante sent the new single in the group chat like a week ago. My first reaction, it's perfect pop rock, dude. Thanks, you guys are still so in the pocket. It's unbelievable.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. We weren't going to make a record. Our whole plan originally in 2020 was I was just almost finished with another solo record. Everybody is kind of busy doing things. And so we were going to tour in 2020, make a song or two and put that out. And that was kind of going to be it. And then, 2020 and 2021, everybody was locked down. Nobody was doing shit. And so it was 2022 when we still, in my house, we weren't quite ready yet to embark on a real tour. And so, but all of our friends were, all the other bands that we know were all out in 2022. So that was the first time we felt guilty and we felt bad. And so we decided that maybe we'd use that year instead and just put together a record.
Because we've had friends of yours on the podcast. Mark Roberts from OAR is like our.
Oh yeah, Mark's the man.
I know you guys just got in this. You were in the studio with him recently writing, weren't you?
Yeah, his guy that does a lot with him, a guy named Greg Wattenberg, who produced one of their songs that him and I wrote with Greg. He also did the Matchbox 20 record as well. So Greg just has this great little studio in the city that just becomes like this little modern version of the Brill building, right? Where it's just all these writers and artists just kind of coming through at all times. It's really nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So Rob, we lined this up with your label last week, and right after that, I'm in my car driving and your song comes on and I'm like, I didn't see the dash. I didn't see that it was you guys, but I was like, this is really fucking good. Who is this? So I pulled up the dash. I was like, holy shit. So I texted the group. I'm like, guys, this is like 20 minutes after we just found out we were going to have you on this week. It's like, you got to listen to the new Matchbox record. It's like legit really fucking good. What?
Yeah, we decided, I think that we should put it out without any name on it, just in case there's people that just think that they think that they hate us. And we can be like, no, you don't.
No, I mean, not like a lot of artists will adapt to a new sound and it just doesn't fit. But I mean, it sounds like you guys, but yet it doesn't sound like you guys, if that makes sense. What is that attributed to? How did this song come about? Where'd you record it? How'd the writing process go?
So we did it, a lot of stuff. So we would start off and do everything in our own, like everybody has a studio at home, right? So me and Paul and Kyle, we wait until we'd have like a good 3 or 4 songs that we really felt strong about. Then we'd all come to New York together and then we'd work on those 3 or 4 songs, go back and do that all over again. And we kept doing that in cycles so that we would, have a chance to live with some stuff. You record it, you live with it a little bit. For writing, it's really weird. Like we've always tried to write stuff that we think that we want people to hear, obviously, that we think should be on the radio, but maybe stuff that doesn't sound like what's on the radio. It's just that we want to bring an immediacy to it that makes it feel like you should want to listen to it, I don't listen to a lot. Like I listen to a lot of new music, but I don't listen to a lot of like pop music. And so I have a harder time fitting in, but luckily Greg Wattenberg, he knows who we are and he listens to a lot of radio. And so he knows, I think there's certain just sonically things that producers think about that I don't think about, that just really is like literally in the DNA of like the drum track, just sounding slightly different, just having like a certain gate on it that just makes it sound a little more modern than if you had just, recorded it a different way. And luckily I don't have to care about any of those fucking things. Like that's my job. So I'm just like, have to write a really good lyric and a really good melody. I have to like try and write a song that if I played for you guys just with the guitar, you would get it. And then, hopefully there's some big brain out there that's going to help us figure out how we can get that on the radio.
Is that something you've kind of consciously tried to keep separated in your own head throughout your career? Like, have you ever been tempted to get into the weeds in terms of the producing side, or you just like want to keep it nice and pure, write a song, let other people kind of handle that aspect of it?
Yeah, I mean, I've tried producing for other people. I'm not great at it. I mean, and I think there's a reason why, like, you have bands like U2 that are some of, the most prolific bands in the world. They've done, so many different things. They always work with a producer because there's just something about getting something out of someone else. Like, I produce my demos. I'll spend all year long producing like 2 or 3 albums worth of demos to make one good album eventually. Like there's a lot of shit that goes out with the bathwater when it's all said and done.
That's a pretty good ratio if you're at like 2 or 3 to 1.
Yeah, it's really not bad at all. I mean, and by the way, not every song that makes on the record is great, but at least like, that I worked through a whole process trying to get there. And like a lot of things, you have to finish the bad ones because you don't know, like sometimes in the fourth quarter of writing a song, something turns around, you see it totally differently, and then it becomes something that it wasn't at the very beginning. So there's a lot of work that goes, sometimes they're like full on 8-hour demos where I'm doing like drums and bass and really pulling stuff together, and none of that will ever be heard. We don't use any of it, but it just helps me get to the ending song.
Yeah.
To catch a vibe. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about this a lot as songwriters. We're all songwriters. Like I always say, like, I don't do any of the production stuff. It doesn't interest me. I leave that to people like Kenny, who's a world-class producer, to handle that kind of shit. But you said something interesting too, because we talk about it too. Like, it's important to keep those demos because you might pull something out of one of those dog shit songs that might be good for another piece of another song.
Dude, how many times has somebody that doesn't know what they're talking about told you, if it's good enough, you'll remember it. You don't need to.
Yeah.
And like, that's just bullshit, man, because there's like, I can go back now probably and find something from a year or two ago in my voice notes that will just strike me differently. It's just a melody that might be a verse, but now I know where it's supposed to go. Or I'll write a chorus and I'll remember something and go back mining through that stuff. And then a lot of things that, like the big mistake I used to make was like waking up in the middle of the night and writing down something. Because so much of it is melody based that when you wake up and you look at the notes that you wrote down, if you don't remember the cadence and you don't remember the melody that came with that line means nothing to you anymore. So like, you're way better off with a voice note that just goes, I'm not Santa for touch of my hand to survive it, than you are actually writing down like a really great lyric,
If someone were to find my phone and go through my voice memos, it would sound like the diary of somebody losing their mind because it's so.
Yeah, I definitely think if anybody was like listening to the first inkling of an idea, they would just be like, "Dude, you were fucking overpaid."
I think you guys have had so many hits and you've done so much individually as well, but I don't think people give you enough credit as just a great American songwriter.
You know what? I don't think people give me enough credit as a great American, honestly.
Right, dude.
Like, I am all about freedom, dog. I'm about that freedom life. No, I appreciate that. I'm not good at compliments, so I'm like I'm master deflector as soon as they come at me.
Hell yeah. I mean, dude, I ran through like this past week on the treadmill. I've been running through just the Matchbox 20 discography. Like a song like Bright Lights to me. If that would have been released in like the 70s, that would be like a fucking all-time anthem to me. Like it's very like, hey, I hate to use the term like Hey Jude, Beatles kind of shit, same key, but it's the first song I always play when I sit down at the piano. Anytime I sit down at the piano, Bright Lights is the first thing that comes out.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that, man. I love that record actually. Like that whole record, More Than You Think You Are, like, it's hard now if you're a new band to get lucky enough to make it to get to the third album, right? And the third album is really a place where you start to find yourself and you start to kind of figure out, because your first record, it's all raw talent and hopefully a good producer. And you like the sound of that record, people are listening to you learn how to make a record. People are listening to, you just trying to figure out where the fucking buttons are and how to, and like how to sing in a studio. You've been singing like in bars for the last 3 or 4 years and traveling around in your van, like playing, at college bars and stuff. And now you're in a studio. It's a different mindset. It's a different muscle. And then your second record, if you're lucky enough to have success on your first record, that's the one where you spend a little too much money. Like, like we were lucky when we could and like have like 68-piece orchestras and throw it and just throw everything at it, And then if you're lucky again, then the third record is where you settle into yourself. And we as a band, we're like, this feels like who we sound like. And it's funny that like, if you see us live now, even the stuff from the first record, it kind of sonically now sounds a lot more like the third record. Like it just it sounds a little more like a band, and I think a little less polished in that way. Hey, buddy. Sorry.
I was gonna say, we'll talk about the first record. I mean, you guys came out swinging, obviously. Like, what was the process for you guys, like, of like your early days to getting signed to that adjustment period of like putting out a record like that?
Well, at first I missed over one of the main things that everybody knows when you make your first record is that the first record is the record that you have your whole life to write, right? And then that's why the second record is usually that sophomore slump, because you have to write it in a shorter period of time. You got to come up with that material. I was in a band with Brian and Paul from Matchbox called Tabitha Secret. And right at the end of it, it got fucking ugly. I mean, there was everybody had a lawyer. I mean, it got like ugly, like people bringing their parents for an intervention, like that kind of ugly. Like what?
We've done that.
It's nasty. Like we were one step away from like, I don't know. We were like Metallica in therapy, and but so it got really, really bad. And so there was a lot of songs, even though I wrote everything, I didn't understand copyright law or any of those things. So like when the old guitar player from the band just came over and just handed me a bunch of copyright papers, I signed everything. So every song immediately was written by me and these two other guys that have never written a song in their life. And so the only one I kept out of that was 3 a.m. just because that song was really important to me and I love that song. And so even though their name is still on it and they get paid for it, I'm not going to go out into the world and not bring that song because, when you're in a local band, you put out your local CDs or local cassettes really at the time. And we were like, you put out 5 new songs, but 3 a.m.'s on that. And then when you do the next 5 songs, 3 a.m.'s on that one too. And then, because you think that's the one that's going to get you signed. So we got a record deal and I had 6 months. I wrote everything except for 3 a.m. I wrote that entire first record in that 6-month window. So like for me, the first record was my second record. Like I felt like, I really kind of, and I'm so glad it was because when I listened back to those dog shit songs, like it never would have been a successful record of any kind. And unless I'd had that kind of fire that was lit under me. And then it was also lit by a producer who inspired me. Like having a great producer made me want to write better. And knowing that Atlantic Records had signed on to me made me want to write better. So like I really was focused in a way that I'd never focused on anything before. So I think, and then we went in for that record and just practiced it live for like a month and a half, so that by the time we went in the studio, we could just play that record live, because we didn't want to waste any money, going to the studio. So we wanted to be ready. So, you rent like one of those U storage spaces and just sweat for 8 hours a day. Yeah. So we were
wonder if that
as prepared as you could be.
It doesn't.
Just because of the way production. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kenny.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Pre-pro happens anymore. All I do is make records with bands and you just kind of show up, and now it's written as it's recorded as opposed to writing it and then taking it to the producer in the studio. It's such a weird thing.
I think you can hear that though. To me, you feel like you're hearing that's so interesting to hear you saying that, Rob, because there's something about that the organic aspect of 4, 5, 6, any number of musicians coming together and figuring it out like in reality that shapes a song in so many ways better than just the way we all kind of tend to do it these days, which is like record a bit today, come back 6 weeks later, and like there's no stream of consciousness or no line of consciousness. So yeah,
and this was 95 or 96, so we were really lucky. I mean, I think there's so many little factors that all have to land perfectly to have a success, right? And, there's all this luck that has to go in the right place, right time. And one of those things was just that what was happening in like top 40 radio was what we were doing. It was guys in bands playing music. It hadn't moved over into rhythmic and it hadn't moved over, into the kind of the really super dancey pop that it is now. So it would just so happen that like that was a skill set that people were being rewarded for. And so like we were lucky enough to that was what we did at the time. And that really helped. But, like my son now is 24. He just graduated from Berklee College of Music.
Hell yeah.
Moved out to LA. He's got his band called The Lucky. And they don't know what a demo is. Like when I mention a demo, they look at me like I'm high because like you said, they're making the record like immediately. Like when they start, that drum is the drum. And then they're just making an album as they go along. It's kind of crazy because if you came like where we did, there used to be a period where you'd play somebody, an A&R or a friend, what you were playing, and they knew instinctively that this was a demo, and they listened past it to hear like what it could be. And now, like I think even the A&R guys, a lot of them are now they're in their 20s. they're coming into the business, they're not equipped with that skill. Like they don't know they can't listen to just a demo with an acoustic guitar. They have a harder time imagining what that finished product's going to be like.
Literally when bands are turning in, like you're saying, demos now, they're actually being fully mastered. Like you won't even turn in a demo that's not mastered because people will be like, it sounds kind of quiet and like low energy. Like, yeah, it hasn't gone through the whole fucking process yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, that vision and that gap is now huge and missing.
And don't forget, by the way, now when you hand in that perfectly polished done demo, you also have to have 1 billion followers on TikTok for them to take you in too. Like you literally now, I mean, it's kind of, you have to come in and you do all the heavy lifting. You know, you make the record, you get the followers, you bring in, and then, you know, they'll give you the key to let you come in and then try and open that door wider.
They want the finished product. I have a 2-parter here for you. One, how do you have a 24-year-old son? You look like you're like in your 30s.
Well, because I'm 51.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Drop the skincare routine. What are we doing here?
Dude, yeah.
Oh no, I have this filter.
2, you said you don't listen to pop music right currently, which I respect. Who are you listening to? Who are some of your like groups or bands?
First off, I'm not like, I don't mean a diss to pop music because there is a specific skill that I don't have that's involved in making these great pop records. You know, like I have so much respect for these producers and these artists that pull that off. Like it's not me. You know, like right now, all I'm listening to is Wu-Tang, just because I'm watching that new Wu-Tang show on Hulu.
It's so good.
So my wife and I are just like fucking, we're going way back into all the archives of like every day, like we're cooking at the house and just blaring Wu-Tang.
Dude, that's awesome.
But like, you know, I'm kind of like in the boat of like, you know, the Father John Misty's, you know, and kind of like those kind of these a little bit left of singer songwriter, you know, kind of types.
Nice. I mean, you want to talk about an artist who does things that nobody else can do. We've talked about Father John Misty 100 times on here. His songs, the chord structures make no sense, but they're perfect.
Well, you can, you know, here's the thing. You can do whatever the hell you want to do. You just have to be willing to give up certain things here to gain certain things over here. And when I think of people that say, well, there's no good music, I mean, that's the laziest sentence I've ever heard anyone say, because obviously there is. Maybe it's not coming at you the ways that you're used to receiving it, and you need to kind of take a little initiative and go out and find it on your own. But there's so many, I mean, now there's so much great music out there and there's so much access to it. It's just not being hand delivered to you with a bow like it used to be through 4 different places. Now you have to kind of find it on your own.
I'll hold down one thing. I got a question for you. Well, one, Orlando boy, Bishop Moore. I know you're from Orlando.
Yeah, Lake Brantley.
Curious, as I come from the one-hit wonder world, I'm curious. I'm always interested in the pressures of the second record. Your first record was fucking gargantuan, Diamond, right? Did you feel some gnarly pressure on that second record? Did it take you to a dark place? Did you second guess what you were making? I'm always curious about that sophomore record mentality.
We didn't think anything of it until everybody started telling us that we should. Like we were, I mean, because you gotta imagine when you start, one of the things that is key to having any kind of success at all is you have to have a little bit of just like willful ignorance to the possibility, like to just the staggering odds against you going into it. You have to actually believe everybody wants this, but I'm going to actually do it. And I have something to say and people really need to hear it. And you need to fucking believe that in your heart. So when we went into that first record, there was a sense of, well, yeah, I mean, this is what we set out to do. And look, we've done that. It's so easy. And then we realized, you know, I think all of a sudden we're that same band, but we're on a bigger stage and we're not playing with you know, Craven Mellon in Charleston at the music hall. We're playing with the Stones and Smashing Pumpkin at in a stadium. And it's like, oh shit, we got to get better quick. So then, you know, you're like, you really start, you know, just jobbing, just playing every night, trying to just become a better band. And so I think in that time I right in between is when I worked with Carlos and we did Smooth, which was a huge injection into me of like being around an idol and around these amazing musicians and kind of seeing how that's done. And so for us, it really felt like it was clicking because our first #1 single was the first single off that second record when we put out Bent. Like that was the first,
really?
like the first number one single. So then it felt like, I mean, honestly, for a second, it was kind of like, see, I told you, it's kind of easy. Like, I mean, I think, we were still kind of like caught up in that, in that sense of like, well, we're not really good at anything except for this. So it's okay to be a little proud of it. And I think also because we've always had like an eye on like all these bands that we love, how much we love them and the distance between us and them. And so it's always been about like filling up that distance between me and the things that I love and and closing that gap as much as I can at every turn.
Do you still have any sense of pressure or expectation when you're putting out a new album now? Like, obviously, record sales are not a thing anymore, but do you have expectations about what you'd like to see happen, or is it just like we want people to enjoy the music? Is it that simple? I
mean, that's a layered question, I think, and just in that there's, we have an initiated group of fans over the last 30 years. So we have a group of people that we know are there that kind of want to hear. And then because of the kind of band that we are, we're basically a radio band. We also have a large kind of swath outside of that circle of casual fans. People who are like, if you ask them, who's your favorite 5 bands, Matchbox 20 doesn't show up on that list. But then if you go, what do you think of Matchbox 20? They're like, oh man, yeah, I like that band. That's a good band, right? Yeah. And so we know that there's an audience out there for it. I'm more surprised now. Like when somebody's like, oh my God, I was just listening to your record. I'm like, really? Like really? I think I'm more surprised as we get older. There's some pressure that gets let out over here because we're in our 50s. Nobody's expecting, we did the race. We paid the ticket for the ride in the 90s. Like that was, so that we could get on this ride and so that we could be here. And then we worked it and had a lot of continuous success back to back to back. And then my solos came out and I was lucky enough to have success there. And so the pressure of like, I'm like, if you don't like me now, the love me game has got to be over, right? Like, oh my God, you got to love me. Please love me. Like now it's like, I really hope you like this song. I hope that this song means something to you. Like as a band and as a writer, we've always been like songs that are attached to people's lives in ways that like they play it at their wedding and their birthdays and funerals. Like I have a woman that when she passed away, she put one of my song titles on her gravestone. Like, wow. That's like it's big. It's not about you and it's not about talent. It's about the way that somehow that little song made it into someone's life and made them feel something. And so like, that's what you want to be somebody's Saturday night and somebody's Sunday morning, with a record as much as you possibly can. And so that's the pressure there, is just like to hope that we're still doing well enough or have done well enough that it can get out into the world and find enough ears to hear it.
Man, you were dropping some gems. You were dropping some gem sound bites.
Well, so on the note of like,
I've got my teleprompter right here.
No, you can tell you're authentic as it comes. I'm like blown away. Like
Ted's on the other side of the screen holding up cue cards on what to say.
No, man,
I've got Ted Sullivan over there.
You gave some unbelievable advice earlier. Like we always ask, what would you tell, yourself 30 years ago that now that you wish you knew then? But I mean, sounds like your description of that willful ignorance is like nailed it to a T. Like you have to be like almost delusional confidence wise. And
yeah, I mean, there's a reason I think why musicians get a little cocky. And I think it's definitely some sort of a mask. I mean, I think that you create the persona of the person that you want to be in a way, and it protects you, especially at the very beginning, because it's especially when you're starting out. Especially when we were starting out, there was no social media. Like those two words never were used together, right? And so when we started out, it was just people coming up to you because they didn't know who you were and didn't care, and would just say nasty shit right to your face. And so you have to get like a thick skin when that's happening. And I think the way that you do that is you're like, oh yeah. So like people come up and go like, so what's your band like? Matchbox 20, what is it like? And I go, oh, we're the greatest pop rock band in the world. And that's what I would just tell everybody.
Do you remember any instances of haters? Or has anything stuck with you over the years? We were easily had a minute where we were so happy when Nickelback came out because we were like, oh, good, leave us alone. Like we
Dude, one time, so we were out touring with Everclear. We had
our
Everclear
guys.
opening.
Both those bands
both
are our
those
guys.
guys have been on.
Oh,
here.
right on. Yeah. So Art and those guys were opening up the tour, and they had just put out a new record, and there was a review in Rolling Stone of their record, and it was an okay review. But then at the very end of it, for no reason at all, it just said, "But hell, it beats Matchbox 20 any day." And I was like, dude, we didn't even that wasn't even our record, and you're fucking with us. Like that is hardcore.
It's nice to see Rolling Stone turn into such a piece of shit organization though, when they've done that kind of stuff. And now you see they're like top, 100 singers of all time, and they're leaving like fucking giants off the it's just a big troll. They've always been trolls.
Yeah, and now we have a new record, and they went online. So we oh shit! I had the funniest. So we had this band opening for us one time. Do you guys remember Fountains of Wayne?
We love Fountains of Wayne.
All right, so those guys opened up for us, and on the last show, as a tour prank, and our stage setup was one giant screen, like the entirety of this, behind us, and the guys hired the guy who does Robert, I think Smigel, who does Triumph, the insult dog.
Yeah.
And in the middle of our set, they just shut off everything, and he just popped up on the screen and just started fucking eviscerating us. And like
That's awesome.
he comes out and he just goes, "Hey, it's Matchbox 20, or as I like to call them, 3 pricks nobody knows and a tick on Santana's balls."
No way.
It was so amazing. It's online if you ever get a chance to check it out.
We will.
Comic The Insult Dog roast the Matchbox 20. It was pretty great.
I will be pulling that up for sure.
Yeah.
You're talking about this idea of artists having to have a little bit of a delusion and confidence in yourself. There's this interesting stat that, don't quote me on the exact number, but it's something like 39 million songs that are on Spotify have had 0 listens. So it's like, I mean, look, a good portion of that is probably just some algorithm spitting out like the sounds of nature, like just trying to game the algorithm. But then you got to think that there's thousands of artists out there that put that out, and they've got that early confidence. And that's just a weird thing to think about now that it's so accessible, because like you couldn't make a record in the 90s the way you can make a record now in terms of ease and accessibility to get it distributed and all that. So it's just radically changed.
I don't want this to sound the way it's probably going to sound, but with that many people having that readily accessible things to be able to try and make music, the quality has to, not the quality, individually, but the overall bar of quality has to go down a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Like
You don't have to say it. I'll say it so that you save face. You can't have that much fucking music and have it be good.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not possible. I'll say, I'm not putting words in your mouth. I'm saying that, but
you used to, if you were, there's the old man statement of back in my day, when if you were just starting out and you were young, I mean, the idea of what it would take, like to get studio time, to get a band, to get that in there, you had to at least have a leg up and know what you were doing, or rich parents, right? You had to figure out something. But now, I mean, anybody can just make a record and just put it right onto Spotify. So of course, some of that's gonna suck. It kind of has to.
I mean, you said it earlier, it's a lot harder nowadays to find good music. You have to dig because it's so saturated. I forget, Johnny mentioned it a few podcasts ago about how many songs get uploaded a day. It's insane. And like you said, the barrier to entry now is so much lower. I'm a DJ, so trying to find and break records 20 years ago was the funnest thing in the world, and it was a lot easier. Now it's digging is so hard and tedious.
What's weird is almost done a certain way since fucking 1950.
Yeah.
Right up into the 90s. There was a certain kind of, you make a record, you put it out, a guy from a label comes to your town, he checks out your band. If he likes you, he gives you a deal, it goes on the radio. If it does well, you tour. There was kind of a thing that happened. And now you have no idea how that, how that's going to go. It does. I mean, it's not bad or good in some ways. I think the access that some people can have to their favorite artist, that's pretty exciting. the way that people can kind of,
sure.
the fact that maybe, there are bands out there having careers like the Father John Misty's of the world. If they had to rely on VH1, MTV and your local radio station, they might not have the career that they're been able to have. So it definitely turns around both ways. Like how many times if you had a friend that like, or a guy that that comes in and he's like, dude, I wrote 20 songs last night. And you're just like, I bet they suck. Like, really?
No, that's the thing though. I feel like over the last 10 years specifically, like the industry, like that, like thing that gets you out into like the masses has changed like 3 or 4 different times. Like it was like radio, and then it was strictly Spotify, and now it's fucking TikTok. Like the industry is changing rapidly to where you think you have the right thing, and then all of a sudden that's not the right thing anymore. So it's like, how the fuck do you even know what you're doing anymore?
When we started, you make a press kit for labels, and that press kit is literally like a folder, and inside of it you would tape your cassette, with like 4 or 5 demos. You'd have some flyers from some local shows that you played, and then you'd have like a bumper sticker, and you could literally take that, and that was a viable thing that labels, were expecting. That was the way that they would look at it. And I remember having the conversation.
Always helps.
What?
A giant bag of cocaine or an envelope of cash or something.
Yeah. If you dropped off a fucking press kit to like Atlantic Records today, that shit would go right in the shredder.
Oh my God, yeah, right? That was a whole different mindset, I guess. And again, like I don't know, better or worse, but I just know that it made sense. And in some ways, there was, you had like, we were coming off the heads of like these A&R guys, like Ahmet Ertegun and Clive Davis and, Dave Geffen and, like these guys that they would listen. I once heard an A&R guy say, somebody asked him, they say, hey, what do you think of the new whatever record? And he actually said, without thinking, he goes, I don't know. I'm the only one that's heard it.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Nutty.
Dude, I feel like I'm old man ranting right now.
You should. That's what we're here
And another thing, kids, pull your goddamn pants up. I mean, come on.
Nah, man.
Well, it was that thing, like, I can remember even working on songs and we'd be like, send an email to someone like, please don't share this. Now, like, we'll just fucking put it out, like, onto Instagram or whatever. Like, no one cares anymore. There's no such thing as a leak anymore, which is
I remember, like,
cool, but also not cool.
Second, third record, like, you'd have I would, put demos or like the new record on a CD, play it for my friend, and then go burn it in the microwave. And make another one the next time I want, because it was like that like there was a time where the CD that I was holding in my hand was worth more than the car that I was driving it in.
Yeah. Man. Wow. Yeah. Remember burning CDs?
Good times, dude. Good times.
CDs. Great times,
dude. God damn.
Rob, has there been any instances where your son has come to you for advice and you've given him some and he's actually taken it? Or have there been any instances where now that you're recording a new album that he's given you any advice?
Ooh.
He's a first, like he loves listening to all the demos from the very beginning stages all the way through. And he every time me or anybody in the band has tried to give him advice, he never takes it. But he listens. He listens quietly, and that's nice. It looks like he's actually, his band is we're gonna let them open, like be the third act, opening the Hollywood Bowl.
That's sick.
Nice.
That's a good perk. That's a good perk of being your kid.
Yeah, but now I'm gonna hold that over his head forever.
Fair. That's fair. By the way,
like I'm already like anything he wants. I'm like, dude, when I was your age, I lived in a car.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, you gotta. I paid for your college. I paid for where you live. Like, if I always tell him like, I'm not paying your rent. I'm not paying your rent. So there I am paying his rent. And like,
off the record, how's the band? Off the record,
really good. I mean, I think that they're better than I was at 24. The only thing that I think they don't have yet, and I tell them all the time, is they're just missing that song.
Right.
And I think that, they have other songs where if you have, how sometimes like if you have the right spark of the first song, those other songs will fall in the line, but maybe song 2 and 3 can't be the first one that's going to open you to the world. So I don't think they have the song yet. And that's the thing I tell them. I was like, like right around now, I had already written 3 a.m. Like I was, and I was like starting to write songs about things that meant something to me, and not trying to write, beats,
Right.
and not trying to write, I call it writing from the inside out instead of from the outside in.
Yeah.
That's cool. I was gonna say, what's your secret to writing? Why don't you just let the world know? How do we write 3 a.m.?
Yeah, let me write this down. Let me write this down.
Like 12 other songs that aren't as good, and then eventually you'll get to one.
I think it's interesting you said that they're missing that song. And that seems to be one thing that actually has never changed, despite any changes in technology and delivery, is that there is something magic still to a song. That no matter how many songs come out on Spotify every day, one of them is going to be fucking different, and it's going to stick out,
Yeah, I mean, and we should be said too that we talk about the low quality because of just the sheer amount of bands that are out there, but also, I mean, everybody here knows at least one amazing musician or songwriter that you just can't believe has not broken that barrier yet for one reason or another. I mean, there's a lot of talent out there that hasn't been looked at. And I think those are the cautionary tales too, that you look at and make you appreciate any success that you do have, because you realize that makes you see how much luck is involved in the whole process.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing about today's landscape too, and we were talking with somebody on last week's podcast, a guy named Siren, and we came to this conclusion that in today's day and age, because of the volume of songs that come out, a lot of the times through social media, people need to connect with the person first, and then they'll give your art a chance. So you almost have to put yourself out there first, and then if they like you enough, they'll give your songs a chance. Whereas before it was like, oh, this is just in front of me, and now I can get to know the band. It's just a completely different mindset nowadays in the consumer.
Yeah, I always, and I feel like when you're writing, to me, like the melody is your key, right? A melody is above all, because nobody hears a lyric first. I mean, even songwriters really, the melody is kind of like when you're at a bar, the hot girl on the other side of the bar, just when you see her, that's the melody, because that's what draws you over. Right. And if you get over there and then she's good conversation and she has a lot to say and she's smart and she has personality, that's the lyric. You know what I mean? Or maybe that's the rest of the album. Wow. But I think like when I'm writing, like the first thing I hear out of anything is that melody. I think that's the first thing that anybody grabs onto in a song. You can just, it strikes, and every songwriter I know kind of is that way too. I'm not saying, like, a lot of times I'll write something out, like a line that'll spark, an idea of a song. But most of the time, it's just fishing and melodies coming out, and then a melody that just sticks. And you're just like, oh, what is that? It's like a radio station that's kind of above your head sometimes, and you're tuning in, and then all of a sudden you hear this melody, and then you're like, well, what is that? And you go, oh shit, that's nothing yet. That's me. And then you try and wrangle it down.
Dude, so I just read Rick Rubin's book, and that's all he talks about in it is how you have antenna that you can't see, and it's how open you are to receiving.
Oh, what is that called?
Hold on.
Dante probably has it bookmarked. He's probably been reading it back to front.
Finding it, I'm curious. Like, melody is so important, right? And let's say that you have a melody in your head for a song, and then you go back and you don't like the melody as much anymore, and you want to change it. Is it tough for you to remove yourself from that original melody to change?
Yeah, I have the hardest time with. If something comes out viscerally, I have a real hard time with the rewrite. Right. And I mean, like, a lot of things will happen if I'm writing with someone, which has been, I used to not write with a lot of people. Like, everything was just it was a solitary thing. And the more I wrote with other people that were good writers, the more I really learned to lean on them. Because the amount of times where I would just be like, dude, you're fucking up that song. And then like the next day I'll come back and be like, oh yeah, that's better. I was wrong. That's just better. But you know how it is. I mean, imagine somebody just singing a song that you love and just singing it back to you with the wrong melody, and because it's in my head that way, that's what I think has to be the right melody. It can't be wrong, Right,
yeah.
Who's the best songwriter you've ever been in a room with?
Willie Nelson.
Nice. Willie Nelson. Oh
Great
my
answer.
God. What was that like?
Yeah, that's softball though, because it's fucking Willie Nelson.
Yeah,
I wish I could have written like a quarter of one of his songs. I'd take a verse of one of his songs.
Dude, I was writing with I wrote 2 songs with Mick Jagger. One was Disease that was on the Matchbox 20 record, and one was a single of his solo called Visions of Paradise. And I was in the studio, and me and this keyboard player, Matt Clifford, who's like the Stones keyboard player, we were just kind of getting started waiting for Mick. And we're sitting there, and we're kind of fucking around with this melody, and we're going like, don't put your arms around me and don't tell me lies. And like, we just keep we're doing that. And Mick literally walks in with a bag and he just goes, I could get used to your vision of paradise. And then he sets the bag down. I'm just like, oh shit. And then we'd work up Disease as a demo because he was singing it at first because we thought he was going to do it. And when he's listening back to the demos, he sits in the control room and he's got his hands on the board and he's listening. He's got his eyes closed. And the whole time he's listening, he does the Mick.
Oh no.
And it's almost like he's trying to see if it feels right for him, you know?
Yeah.
He's all in his own little world. It's pretty amazing. I mean, those kind of like those are high stakes rooms to be in, where you're just like,
shit.
and also
so
like that was the time like
cooler than
after we had sold like 20 million records, and I thought I was famous, and then I went out with Mick Jagger one night, and I was like, I'm not famous.
Kenny, what,
We talked about for the second record, you said in order to do the sophomore record, you needed the confidence to do it. Is that the same mentality going into the room with somebody like Willie or Mick? Like you're just like, I can be confident in my shit and go in there, or was it a nervous wreck?
No, I had a strategy for those moments, which was get really high.
Nice.
And all else fails.
With Willie, that was easier
yeah.
because it was required.
That's awesome.
That's the Kenny Carkeet method right there. Kenny, that's how you do it, right? You motherfucker. Rob, you're cooler than us and you're smarter than us, and I want you to know that. I gotta have two more questions to bookend this. First, and I know this is a hacky question, but when you made Smooth with Santana, did you walk out of the room and know that was going to be like the second biggest song of all time?
Yeah. No, my wife thought it was going to be really big. I was so like, I just thought that I was going to get a chance to work with Carlos Santana. I thought it was going to be something I was going to have to let people know that I did. You know, well, because if you think about it, at the time, like I grew up on Black Magic Woman and Oyo Como Va, you know, Evil Ways. But like the idea, if somebody said, you know, hey, next week, Carlos Santana is going to put out a record and it's going to be the biggest record in the world, you'd be like, yeah, okay. Like it just sound unbelievable. Not because he's not fucking Carlos, right? But
how did that come about? How did that come about, by the way?
I was living in Soho in the city, and I was just gotten off the road. I've been on the road for like 3 years on that first record. And there was a guy literally a block and a half from me that was working on this song that later became the track for Smooth. But he had written a whole song that was kind of about like, there's a party in room 227 or something like it was. And Carlos was like, you know, he kind of liked the vibe, but he's like, I'm not going to write a song. I'm not going to sing a song about that. So I rewrote a lyric and a melody for it. And then I was just supposed to write. I wasn't going to sing it at the time. And then after going back and forth through a lot of things, Carlos had never heard of me. He was just like, he's like, well, I like this guy. He's like, does he sing? And they're like, yeah, he's in a band. And Carlos is like, well, I believe him. So I'll use him.
Huh, interesting.
And what's great is, you know, it's been 23 years. I'm now, I think 3 years younger than Carlos was when we did Smooth. And no exaggeration, Carlos is one of my best friends in the universe. Like we talk, if not daily, you know, at least 3 or 4 times a week. We're constantly, our wives make fun of us because we text like little girls all the time with lots of emojis, and we send each other like songs. And if we're both on the road at the same time, every night we get on the bus, sending each other like pictures of like our crowds and being like, look what I did today. And he'll be like, look what I did today.
I pictured the
Just to go
text,
back, so go ahead.
I pictured the morning text messages being like you guys back and forth, like, thank you for making that song. I love money. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
you know, sometimes though, he'll just be like, he'll literally like hold up his, at his place in Kauai and hold up his phone and be like, look what our song got me.
yes, that's what I want to hear.
Just to go back real quick, you said your wife thought it was going to be a hit. We talk about this a lot on this podcast. Like, I know Kenny's wife and Colin's wife, like, getting a good response for a song out of them is next to impossible.
It's never happened.
Kind of same with me. But every now and then, if they say they like something, I trust my wife's opinion on that. Do you have that same kind of thing where you know, like, if she's digging it, it means something? Yeah,
I mean, you know, over the last 24 years, she's got, her track record is pretty amazing at the songs that like at her picking them. I mean, it's gotten, she's good enough that like Paul in the band, the dynamic is, you know, he's like, out of everyone in the band, you know, we're brothers because we've been together for 30 years. Paul's like my best friend. Like we're like, we're like the two old guys in the Muppets, just sitting there, just kind of like cracking fun of everything and everyone. And like we'll be sitting in the studio and he'll like, so what do you think? And I'll tell him, and he'll go, what does Maudie think? What does she say? And he always wants like her advice on a video or her advice on,
Good
I
taste.
picture her like sitting in the studio with a big cigar, like an old school record exec, being like, "This is the one, kid." You know what I mean? Like,
but then the funny thing is, then she'd be in the studio for like 5 minutes. She's like, "All right, I'm gonna fucking go. This is boring." Oh my God.
Yeah, like listen, I don't want to listen to you looping around shit.
yes,
Yeah.
that's the realest shit I've ever heard in my entire life.
Yeah, no, it's so funny because she's my biggest fan. She loves, she loves to see the shows. She loves to hear the records. She, even this one, like when we were going into it, at this point in our lives, like it's much easier to make a solo record. It's much easier to have that kind of personal autonomy with your time and how you do the tour and the routing and everything. You kind of control that. And so there was a lot of conversation about like, if we were ready, after these 3 years of lockdown, like, do we feel like we were ready to do this with the band? And after like half the record, we were sitting one night and she was just like, it's like, you're doing the right thing. She's like, this is a really good record. And this is the record you should be making right now. And I was like, right on. And I know she must admit it because it's not as easy for her life either, in the Matchbox world. And so she wouldn't say that unless it was 1,000% true for her.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's fucking beautiful.
So
she said one time when we first started dating and before we were married, she was on the road. Like I had the record had probably been out for like a year. So I had a lot of fun. And then I met her and then we had a lot of fun. Like we, kind of went through that together. we'd just gotten a bus that, we had just gotten 2 buses because that meant that people could bring their girlfriends or wives out if they wanted to. And so we tour all over the world. It's like 2.5 years later, we're sitting at home in our apartment in New York. And she just looks at me out of nowhere and she goes, I miss the bus. And I was just like, fucking marry me.
That's amazing. Rob, at the top of the show, we were talking about the new single and we never even plugged it or mentioned it. It's Wild Dogs. Kenny take Wild Dogs and throw it in the editing afterwards. We also need to plug the upcoming album. I don't want Ted to beat us up after this is over. Can you tell us what we can expect as fans and tell us what you're most excited about off the record, us hearing?
So the record is called Where the Light Goes. It's a title track of one of the songs that's on the record. It was like the first song that we really all agreed that we wanted to put on the record was Where the Light Goes. Wild Dogs is actually hold on one second. I'm getting a call from Australia.
Please
you guys there?
Carlos. Please be Carlos.
No, I think it's just some Australian interviews, but they're way early. So where was I at? Sorry. So Wild Dogs was the last song that we wrote. Like we thought we were done with the record, and then Paul sent this track to me, and then I just started kind of like screwing around with it, and we kind of threw it on at the last minute. And as soon as we wrote it, we were like, we wanted this to be the first single, just because we wanted, this is the way we've been gone for a long time, and this was the way that we wanted to kind of come back, because this was the way that we felt about this record, that kind of vitality, that kind of energy.
Yeah, that song to me, it feels like Kintsugi era Death Cab for Cutie meets modern country, which I don't know if you'll get that, but like modern pop, like pop country kind of sensibility in the vocals meets Tom Petty. That's what I took from it.
Well, it's funny you say that because that is there's a lot of 80s on this record, right?
Nice.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I know. Hey, Ted, will you text Nick and tell him I know? So there's a lot of 80s on this record, right? So like Wild Dogs and Where the Light Goes, those kind of are like in that, Tom Petty Full Moon Fever meets Springsteen Tunnel of Love, kind of production-wise 80s. But then we have stuff going on that Paul wrote, like 4 or 5 songs that are full on like Level 42 or like Go West 80s.
Ooh.
You know what I mean? Like it's really out there. So like we're excited about like just all the different 80s flavors, that are kind of cooking up on the record. I mean, I think it's just because that's us, right? That's our age. That was like where our heart came from. That's where like all of our early influences kind of really came from. And as artists now at this stage in our age, we're not going to look at New Music Friday
right
to get our cues on how we want to sound. It would be disingenuous. It wouldn't work for us to kind of do that. So the best thing to do is go back and pull things that, that inspired us growing up and try and incorporate that into something new.
God damn, dude. I can't wait for this record. And Rob, you spent so much fucking time with us. We really appreciate it. We're all huge fans.
Yeah, and apparently I got to go because Australia's blowing up my fucking phone right now.
Really quick.
Hey, calm down, mate.
I have one last thing. Oh, by the way, the book, Rick Rubin's book, pick it up.
What's it called?
The Creative Act. It's one of the best books I've ever read. You'll fucking love it.
No, I loved his documentary, so I'm definitely gonna read it.
So yeah, pick it up. But I need you, huge favor. This will make my mom's year, birthday, Christmas present, everything. You got to give my mom, Barbara, a shout out. She's your biggest fan in the world. She's seen you 10 times. She still plays your CDs in her car daily. She's obsessed.
Barbara.
Well, then I want to say hi to Barbara. Barbara, thank you so much for sticking in there with us. Thank you for pushing out Dante.
Yeah.
You did good.
Thank you so much. You're the man, Rob. Thank you so much.
Motherfucking Thomas. Got to go talk to Australia. I didn't even ask you about Sinbad. I'm so fucking mad right now. I totally dropped the ball on Sinbad.
Really quick. My son was walking down through college campus. Sinbad was walking. My son runs up to me. He's like, oh my God. He goes, listen, I'm sorry. He goes, I met you once when I was really little. You worked with my dad, Rob Thomas. And he goes, Rob Thomas is your dad? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, tell him he's still my bitch.
Yes! That's how you end an interview. Goddamn.
Guys, thank you so much. I don't mean to jump off. I really could do this all night. You guys are fun.
Dude, this is fucking awesome. Go listen to the new Matchbox 20 album. Rob Thomas, you're our best friend now. Thank you so much for being here.
Guys, thank you so much. I'll talk to you again soon.
Adios.
Later, brother.